Welcome, and tonight we're going to be going over the homework, Project 5. It's important that you understand the parts of this that are going to be on the practical, so because we don't have class time to go over it, I'm posting this for anyone who struggled and wants to get a better idea of how to approach it. So, first things first, pull up the assignment. Hopefully you've already done this, but and you've been successful. But if you haven't, or if there were parts you struggled on, I'll go over them. Now, the practical itself won't be anywhere near as complex as this. It'll be much more straightforward. But again, the same basic things. You're going to start a new project, call it project, in this case, Project 5. You can call it Project 6 if you want. And we're going to create a form. And then basically it's going to have 3 buttons, which, wouldn't be surprised if you saw something like that on the practical. And then we're going to enter some different numbers to see if they work. I don't know if I'll do them all, but I'll give you the basic idea of how to get this to work. So this is what your initial form is going to look like here, this guy here. So let's see if we can get that part started. So again, you open your Visual Studio. File, new project. This will be a Windows form project. Call it something. You can call it 5 if you want, or 6 if it makes you really happy. There we go. Then, of course, we're going to have your basic buttons. Now, when you're doing buttons like this, particularly if you know at the beginning, you don't always know at the beginning, so it's hard to do. But we have an idea. We're going to have these 3 buttons. So let's go ahead and, we can get them to be the same size. A little wider. And then we can make the horizontal spacing equal. That is, this space and this space will be equal. That's good. Right. Now, again, I can use Hungarian. All right, thank you for interrupting. Let's see, interrupting cow say. So CMD clear, so I will update this to clear. Right, and then this will change to calculate. And hopefully you're very familiar with all this right now. And again, as far as the naming, the names and the variable names that you use, it's really up to you. And I spelled calculate wrong. But what you should be is consistent in whatever convention you decide to use. So if you just want to go with the standard Camelback, that's great. Okay. And I'll change this to... And one of the reasons we do this, of course, is because the IntelliSense will help us find controls. Once you start associating with database fields and things like that later, that might not be a big advantage. Now let's go ahead and we can change the our form properties. We can update right, and then make the title, the text, something a little more useful. Okay. So we've got our 3 buttons, and now you're supposed to put the labels over there of your name and what subject this is. So let me we can go ahead and do that. Let's see. So, copying and pasting can be tricky, but one of the advantages with controls is that if you copy and paste, you can sometimes maintain certain things about controls, like the font used and that sort of thing, which can be handy sometimes. Of course, you can also do multiple selects and have the same effect, so not really required. Now, some of you haven't seen this, some have asked about it, but the container that is used here, and I'm not going to take off any points if you didn't get this to work, is a group box. And now another handy thing we'll see is by doing a multiple select, I'm using Shift key and then doing a multiple select, I can move controls as a group. Clicked a little too hard. I'm sure you've experienced that at this point. Sometimes when you over-click. So if you looked back at the assignment, they wanted that rental information. So for the group box text, we can change this to rental. Okay. So now to place controls on this, simply I drag and drop them into this area. And now they'll be part of this group box, which means this is a container which can accept other controls, which also means they'll move as a group themselves. Let's take a look what's supposed to be in there. Customer number, car type, mileage, number of days. So I'm going to need a few labels. Right. And I will, now let's see, these are a little close there, right? So I can, again, use the Shift key, get a multiple select, and maybe shift those down a little. Oh, thank you for interrupting me. I appreciate that. Just jump in front of me. So do a multiple select. Move those down a little bit as a group. That's handy. Okay, so now I want to associate these with some text boxes. Right, so we're going to have a few text boxes. And again, the text box, if I decide, get a little more space here. If I decide this is going to be the size, well then if I copy this one, you can see it's going to be, and I can do multiple pastes on that control. Right. And let's so let's see what's available here. Make the same size, make the same height, make the same width, align the bottoms, make vertical spacing equal, make horizontal spacing. So like vertical spacing equal, you can see they just moved a little bit, but it might be nice to have a little more space between these. And you can see, use the alignment tools to your advantage. Right. And then again I can take a look here and make sure that I've got a nice alignment. Let's see, what align centers. I think, oh, that's because, see, I have the outer one selected too. That's my problem here. Escape here. Hit escape to undo the, and then I'll go ahead and reselect so that now this was not available previously because I had the outer one selected and it couldn't make sense of trying to make that equal, right? And now I can take a look and verify that these are kind of in the same spots, right? There we go. All right. So now I have that rental agreement. You can go ahead and update the labels if you want. I'm not going to do that. It'll be kind of boring for you guys, so I'll skip it. But it's the customer number, the car type, and the mileage, and the number of days, right? And then the bottom box is going to be the rental charges. So I'm going to go ahead and cheat a little bit here. So let's see, I'm going to copy this, paste it. Notice it let me paste the whole thing, right? That's kind of handy. Again, I'm going to use this to shift those down for me. Oops. Trying to grab the outer box, not doing very well. There's the. All right. So now this is going to be the rental changes. Oh, rental charges, excuse me. I guess I was thinking about that. Changes doesn't make much sense. All right, rental charges. And then I'm gonna, this actually doesn't have any text box. It has labels, right? And one of the things you'll see here is this is called label 10, which might be a little tricky to actually get the label correct, right? Now, it could be, well, let's see. Actually, I'm going to undo that. I'm going to keep them the way they were, actually. I'm going to undo those because it could be that these are, you know, I could make them labels, or I could simply make them text boxes where they're not, where I can't update them, or they're read-only. Right? You can see it changes their appearance a little bit. That can be, so that can be helpful, useful at times. And I'm just changing the read-only property to true. All right. So, and it will be useful probably to have a meaningful name there. Daily charge, mileage charge, insurance plan. And the reason this is useful is that when I go to the back and try to update them, I can tell what they are, right? Even if I'm going to call them daily charge text box, whatever, you know, something that makes it meaningful, so I can utilize that. I can know what it is. Insurance plan, insurance cost. I think I'm going to need one more set, right? So again, be able to adapt. Oh, thank you. There we go. Clicked a little too hard. I'm sure you're familiar with that too. All right. And I can copy those as a pair. And I'll get another pair in there. And there we go. And what is this total? Get a single click. My Visual Studio is being a little cantankerous. So charges. All right, so now I have the basic layout, and you could update the labels. So let's take a look. Now, one of the nice things about grouping things together in a group box, you can see here I go over here to grab it. Notice when I'm over here, I can't grab it. If I go over there, you see that I can grab it. Is that now the controls are kind of together. So once I get them formatted properly, now I can have these two sets of controls and kind of move them over, and I could put them side by side. I could try different formats without having to move all these individual controls. I think I'm off a little bit. If you look, you might notice I'm a little off there. So I could do some, make vertical spacing equal, You can see they moved a little bit. There we go. And that 10 down there. Okay. So now, particularly on the practical exam, you're going to want to do one of these pretty quickly, right? This is probably going to be like 5 points, but I mean, it's really easy. This, which is actually referring to the form, close, tab for autocomplete, all right, semicolon. That'll be probably 5 points on your practical exam for one line of code. That'll be nice. Then clear, of course, since I called them all Textbox, you can see that's one of the reasons that it's nice, is that the Hungarian kind of keeps them together. Even though Hungarian's fallen out of favor, in certain instances it can be pretty useful. And then we have the clear. So you can use a clear method, or we can set the text property to we can do this as well. It's the same effect. Either one of these is correct. Right. I think I should have seven text box fields to clear. Go back and check that. Charges. You get the idea here. I'm not sure. Am I missing some? I may be missing a few of these. Oops. Text. 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. I think I probably missed a couple renamings on some of the controls. Let's go take a look. Text mileage charge. Text TXT daily charge. Insurance cost. Total charges. So these guys here I didn't give nice names to. So I'll have to fix that. So of course not paying customer number. one's supposed to be the car type. And what do we got? We got the mileage and the number of days. So now my IntelliSense they should show up for days, clear. Number. And of course, one of the things I should do pretty quickly is, oops, you can see, pay attention to the red dash. It's telling me I haven't given it. Okay. We got TXT. We got. What about the car type? There we go. Car type. All right. So now I can't test all of these. Oh, again. I'm not paying attention. There we go. I can't test all of these yet because I haven't set them to anything, right? I haven't set the lower text boxes to values. But I can test these upper ones to see if that's working. So let's go ahead and I can test one. I can test, all right, I can test the exit. That looks good. And this is going to get annoying fast. Okay, so now so that works, but I'll have to remember that I haven't quite gotten that that fully tested because I have these down here to take care of. 1, 2, 3. I think I'm missing one too. We'll come back to that later though, because I want to move on a little bit and get moving. So the label up here, mileage, days. We got customer number, which we're not really going to use, car type, mileage. Oops, not what I wanted to do. Right. Not paying attention again. VMware is killing me. All right. Okay. So for these three guys, I need to actually convert them, right? Because this is going to come in as text, and I'm going to need to convert them. You can see here, car type, mileage, and days. right? So when I go to calculate, the first thing I need to do is convert over the car type. So car type will be an integer. So let's just get a local variable for the car type, and we'll set it to 0 for now. It's nice to initialize our variables. And then we're going to have mileage, right, equals 0. And then we will have also the days, right? So one of the things I want to do is verify that I can convert these, right? So one of the ways to convert these is we saw that we can use the try parse, right? And it takes the try parse, we can see here, takes a string, and then it needs an output parameter to take its value, right? So if we're going to do the car type, we'll use text car type. We'll have the text box for the car type, and then the text parameter, right? Because that's the actual text. The whole enchilada is the text. Car type is the text box, which has a lot of properties. We specifically are interested in the text that it's set to. And then we will output this. We have to remember the out indicator, because for the most part it's passed by value. But in this case, we do want to keep that, we do want to update that local variable. So we have to specifically give it the out, right? And for now, we'll leave it at that. So we'll just say, try parse, right? But what we know is that it's possible this failed. So we'll come back to that in a second. So these guys are going to be the mileage and the days, right? And we're going to want the mileage text box, right? And we'll want the days text box. Oops, didn't go too much. All right. So there's my conversions. But what we know is that this actually returns a value. It returns a value. But we'll come back to that. So now let's just say I have the correct information and I've converted them. So that means based on the car type and the mileage and the days, I can figure out what I'm supposed to charge, right? So if you look back at your little guy here, effectively, based on the different car types, I get different daily charges, right? So for car type 1, it's 20 and 25 charge per mile. So it looks like I need to have this charge per day and charge per mile to actually calculate the charge, calculate the daily total charge. And it says here I should create a function to do that. So, and a function really is, we call them more often methods. So, and it actually told me what to call it, right? It said daily charge, right? And we'll come back to a couple of things on this. Now remember, this is the method signature. And what is it going to return? Well, the daily charge is going to be some sort of double or decimal, right? So I need to have that. Now it's mad at me because it's like, oh, you don't return anything. So let's do this. I'll immediately just go ahead and create a double in here. Phew, terrible. Sometimes that actually IntelliSense gets in the way. And I'll set it to 0 for, just initialize it to something. Then I'll return it right away. Charge. Right. So now it's not mad at me anymore. But what do I need to know to calculate the daily charge, right? So let's think about that. The daily charge, if you look back here, it's the number of days and the charges per day. So the problem is that the charges per day varies. So really, to get the total daily charge, I need the number of days and the car type. So how do I get information into a method? Well, I use parameters. And the car type is an int, and so is the number of days. At least we're going to assume it is. Other processes, perhaps number of days would be something a little more, would be a decimal, 1.2 days. But in our case, we don't need to worry about that. Okay, so now we have our charge, and we're going to return it. But now to get the correct value, we're going to have to do this based on the car type. So we could use a switch. Use a switch, right? And switch on car type. I got my cap locks on. There we go. So I have a case 1 and then a break. Right, because remember, I always have to have a break if I'm going to put any code in here. Case 3. Right. So if you look back at here, it's the charge per day is 20, 25, and then 32. So, oops. Spell charge right, a little easier. There we go. So one, it's going to be the number of days times the times, is it 25? Is that right? Go back and look at my, oh, it was 20. All right, 20. Now, I could put a 20 point, I'm 20.0, but I could put just 20. It'll be okay, because it will automatically upcast that for me, promote that. This is going to be 25. And then 32. All right. So now I can actually call this method. And remember, to call something, I can simply, I just calculate daily charge, and I give it the values that I want to feed in. In this case, one will be the car type, and the other will be the days. All right, so now I probably am going to want some way to keep track of the daily charge locally here, right? Now I have this, so let's, I could continue on and do some other things, but instead probably might be nice to see if this is working the way I expect it to. Let's just output that. We can say text, what is it, daily charge dot text, because we want to update that text field, and then we have daily charge dot toString right? And this is what type? It is currency, so we can add this parameter, which will tell it that it's currency. So now if we were to run this, and put in the card type of 1 maybe, and days of, say, 1, what do we expect to get? Well, the card type of 1 should set the daily charge to 20, and then for 1 day that should mean that the daily charge is 20, and there it is. Okay, so now I can change the card type to 2, recalculate, 3, recalculate. Now let me choose, make sure that this is happening properly. So there we go. So 1's nice because it's very clear to see that it's picking up the right value, but then I do want to, in fact, multiply it by something to make sure that that's working. All right. So there we go. Okay, so now we have this guy working as expected. So how do you think, now the next step would be what, the calculate the total mileage charge. So how is the total mileage charge going to compare? Is it going to be very similar to this? So it's mileage times the charge per mile. So it's similar, it's very similar, and we have to, again, what do we need? We need the card type for that, right? So these are going to have the same form almost. So let's go ahead and reuse that code. We're going to have to update it. Now you have to be very careful when you do copy and pasting because it's easy to make a small mistake that will make your answer wrong. So calculate, and here no longer number of days, but and we don't need to change that, but it's nice to change it because then whoever is reading your code will have a better idea of why you're doing what you're doing, right? All right. So then we need to, it's 25, 35, and 40. Okay, so that was pretty quick. Nice. But now, of course, once again, we need to call that, right? We want to change this to something meaningful again. And we have total mileage charge. And then this will not be the days anymore because now we want to get the mileage, right? Okay. So once again, we could move on, but it probably makes more sense to make sure that this is working as we expect, right? And what do we call this? We called it mileage charge. To string, and again, this is going to be a currency, right? Some money. So we can go ahead and throw in some numbers here. I'm going to fix that before it drives me crazy. There we go. Again, come over here. Move that up a little bit. Grab there. Move that up a little bit. Grab all three of these. All right. So the car type, I'll start with 1. The mileage, again, something simple. And the days, something simple. And then I'll calculate. So 250, that's 10 miles. Something sounds amiss, right? Because I'm supposed to be charging 25 cents a mile, and I'm getting this whopping charge. So let's take a look. What did we do? Okay, so down here when we did the mile charge, and this is dangerous copying code here, right? We were cavalier and we didn't move the decimal place properly, right? Because it's 0.25 and 0.35, 0.35 and 0.4, right? All right. So let's say 10 and 10, and do a calculate. That looks a little better, right? Let's change the car type. Make sure that that looks good. All right, and maybe 3. See what happens there. All right. All right, so that looks a little better. All right, so now we have the daily charge and the mileage charge. So let's take a look. We're moving along pretty well here. But now it gets a little trickier. We have to calculate the insurance plans for both of these. One is 20% of the total daily charge with a minimum of $10. Or it's going to be $15 plus $1 per day of rental. So what's the, let's see, $10. It's 20% of the total daily charge. So we have a plan 1. %20 times our daily charge. And this is really our total daily charge. We could rename it that if it makes you feel safer, you know. Make sure, because we have the daily charge, which is, you know, what a particular day, one day costs, and total daily charge is the number of days times that. So we can update that, make it a little more clear. And then we have plan 2, which is $15, right, plus the number of days, right, days. Right. Right. Now, the one thing about plan 1 that we have to be careful with is if plan 1 what did it say? Less than 10, that we should make plan 1 10, right? So you notice that, you know, plan 1 is a double and I'm assigning 10, which is an integer. Is that okay? Well, it's not producing an error, so it's okay, but it's important it's doing an automatic promotion because it's not losing precision. That's okay. All right. So now moving on to now, depending on which one of these is less, we want to choose it. So if, oops. That was unfortunate. So if if, there we go. Plan 1 is strictly less than Plan 2. And that's because if you looked closely at the instructions, it specifically says that to choose Plan 1 if it's less. Right. Then we are going to choose Plan 1. Otherwise, we're going to choose Plan 2. So we'll have an if or an else here. Now, so what we need to do is set the insurance plan text. So this is the plan itself. If Plan 1 is less, we're choosing Plan 1. So we just have to go ahead and assign 1. Easy. What about the cost? Well, the cost will be, again, text, set the parameter, will be the Plan 1 that we just calculated. All right. And toString, because it's, again, it is currency, right? Right. Now, don't forget my semicolon. So if it's Plan 2, of course, we're going to do these same two things, just a little differently, right? Because now we're going to like, oh, well, we should set this to 2, because we've chosen Plan 2, and this should be Plan 2, right? All right. So that should calculate the insurance. Let's take a look. So car type 1, 10, 10. So thinking about this, the 20% of the total daily charge, the daily charge is going to be 1 times 10, excuse me, 10 times the daily charge, which is for car type 1 is 20. Okay. So 200 times 20%, which is 40. Or we take the $10, add it to 15, the 10 days, add it to 15, it gives us 25. So it sounds like 25 is lower, and that would be Plan 2. All right, so there we go. All right, so let's see. And I'm hard pressed to come up with a way to get Plan 1 to be cheaper. Let's see. 15. Let's see. 0.2. What if you chose 1 day? 1 day. 20. Okay, let's try that. Let's try 1 day. There we go. So if we choose 1 day, we get Plan 1. All right. Okay, so now the only thing left down here is the total, right? So as far as our calculations, we're close to done, and all we need to do is we have total charges. I will show you how to do this I guess, slightly easier way. I don't know. So we need, well, this is a little awkward here, isn't it? Because we have it saved as a text. We don't know which one to use. So what we can do, we can move this baby right up in here. Because then we know which plan to use. And at this point, we'll have all the other information we need. A little repetitive in the code, but that's okay. So now we know to add Plan 1 plus the total daily charge plus the total mileage charge. Oops, my bad. Mileage charge. There we go. And that all together will be, that's mad because this is supposed to be a text field, right? So by putting those parentheses, I now have access to this, my toString, and I can do this. And again, this is going to be currency. All right. Oh, and it's mad because I don't have a semicolon to terminate my line. All right. So now I can drop this down here. And what's the difference? Well, plan 2 is the difference, right? So now I should actually have calculated all 3. All right, so card type 1, 10, 10, calculate. There we go. So I get $200, $250 for the mileage charge, and then $25 for the fee. That's $227. That looks correct. All right. So I have all my calculations working, but the one thing I'm not doing yet is, and I'm only going to do one of these for you, I'll let you figure out the other ones, is that I want to put error messages up if this doesn't work. So I'm going to go if, I'm going to take my try parse and put it inside an if. Get rid of that semicolon, and then, so if this is true, this is fine, I can keep going. But what I really want to say, if it's not true, I want to do something, right? And in this case, what I want to do is do some sort of error message. So let's go ahead. We can do a message box show. Usually it's a little nicer to do a label. Label's a little less intrusive. Right, so let's change that. And we will change its for color to something a little, let's see if I can, web, oops, there's a nice red. All right. And I probably, even though this is sort of a not that big a deal label, it's error. Oh, and I got it in the wrong spot too. Error car type. Let's call it that. And then I'll move it down below this, right? All right. And it should start with no text, right? Okay, so now I have no text there. So now if that fails, I actually want OBL error car type, you know, something like that, right? Right. But how do I know what's between 1, 2, and 3? And again, this is mad because I need to update the text property, right? Well, I don't, So I could say something like, specifically, just enter a valid number at this point. And for now, I'll just return out of this, meaning I don't want to continue processing. Best case scenario, you'd like to check all of these fields before you jumped out. But so I could do something like this. I could say bool exit equals false, right? And then in here I could take exit and set it to true, saying, hey, you know what, at some point my error processing found an error. So then before I get down to these calculations, I could do an exit, right after I did all my try parses. If I had found an error, I could return out of here. That way I would have checked all of them, but I only jump out if it failed in the processing. The reason is, it's nice to give an error message for all three of them. So before I jumped out, that way if there were errors, they could fix them all. But anyway, but I still need to check that the car type that I just got, now I got a number, but it should be greater than 0, and the car type should be less than 4. If you want to, you can change this. You can make it less than equal to 3 if that makes more sense to you. That's okay. But actually, I want to see if it's, so I want to set this error. I want to do an error label if it's actually the car type is less than 1, or the other way was the valid way, only doing the valued items, or the car type is greater than 3. If that's error, then I want to exit. So I'll say exit equals true. All right. But I should do some sort of error message here, like so. Right. So please enter. Right. The problem is, I don't want to do this if this failed. Because if I do that and I put in bad text, it'll try to actually do this comparison with card type. And card type will have been set to 0. Which will work technically. But I could actually put this as an else if, which might make a lot of sense. Because now I'm connecting it with this saying, oh, if this is good, okay, great. Otherwise, check it again. So now this means I should have some error checking on my car type. So one, I check, is it a valid card? Is it a valid number? Did they give me a number? Did they give me an integer? And second, I said, is it in the right range? So let's go ahead and try that. So you can see the label showing up a little bit right there. So let's go. If I do Fred, and it turns out I can test Fred right away, because what will happen is it'll kick it out. There we go. Now it's a little, you can see it doesn't fit. So I can go back to my little boxes here, widen them out a little bit. Now I can widen out the other one a little bit, make them even. Consistency, users like consistency. It's a Gestalt view of the world there. This I think will crash. Nope, that's because I already set it to 0. It doesn't crash there, but it'd be nice to give them an error message. So if I put in 5, there we go. All right, so You can get the basic idea for the days and the mileage. It's the same basic thing. Take a look. We'd have an if for the try parse, and then if we use a not, and we use that not to say, hey, if this failed, that is the try parse came back false, so that this whole statement together is true, then indicate an error. Then go ahead and check that they gave us valid numbers, valid range, valid numbers in a range. So we wanted 1, 2, or 3. This checks, is it less than 1 or is it greater than 3? If either of those is the case, we're out of the range. So we have to come in here and say, hey, go ahead and tell the user that's not going to work. And then we set our little exit to not do these calculations because they don't make sense with bad data, right? So we don't want to actually do these calculations with bad data. All right, so there you have the basic idea of that assignment, and certainly this will be an important part of your practical, understanding how to use your conditional and your try parse. But the rest will be very similar to this, is just using text boxes, being able to do a clear, a calculate, and exit. So make sure you have the ability to do those things and put the controls on the form quickly and manipulate numbers a little bit. Okay, that's it. This is a little long, but I wanted to be clear so that you had every chance to do well in the practical on Wednesday. So that's it.